2015 elections, we heard from Professor Jega 48 hours ago on this likelihood of not having elections in some of these states where emergency rule is, and joining us to look at that plus other issues concerning the elections as we prepare for them in 2014 as well as the big one in 2015 is Kayode Idowu. He's the Chief Press Secretary to the INEC Chairman. Good morning and thanks for joining us. Tell us exactly what Professor Jega meant when he did say, well, we may not be having elections in some of these states in Nigeria's northeast.
Thank you very much, Lai. Thanks for having me this morning. The report, as we have seen it over the last 2 days about that statement by the chairman, was, to put it mildly, maximal reporting. What the chairman did say was that we desire and hope, INEC desires and hope, that the security issue in the northeast area of the country will have been resolved before 2015. Because it is commonsensical that elections are an emergency situation is not that under which you can legitimately and freely conduct an election. And I think it's very obvious. Now, the normal understanding of emergency rule is that there's a martial regime in force, armed security agents are in charge of daily life routine. And how do you deploy civil workers like election workers under that situation? How do you call people out? Because in any event, don't forget that under a martial situation, rights are freely abridged, legitimately so, because that's why it's an emergency situation. So what the chairman said was that we do hope that that situation will have been addressed before 2015 because a state of emergency is not the best climate under which to conduct a free and fair election. That was what he said.
How then do we again arrive at results? I mean, can we then, will we be in conformity with the Constitution that requires a certain number of votes to be able to declare a winner?
Yes, you see, good question. And that question can only be answered by saying it is when we get to that bridge that we can cross it. As we speak, we do not envisage and we do not hope or pray for a situation where there will be a shutdown of the elections in any section of the country. And so we can begin to project on possible scenarios if it does happen. It's just a plain statement that emergency rule is not the best circumstance under which you can conduct a free and fair election. And we hope that will have been resolved before we get to that. We get to 2015.
Now, I also know that one of the things that a host of people are also looking at is the amount of money that INEC is suggesting we will need to conduct the 2015 elections. Is looking like it's close to 100 billion naira. Is it 98.9 billion naira? Are we correct on that?
Well, thank you very much, Mark, for asking that question. You see, again, this is a very glaring instance of maximal reporting. I can tell you authoritatively that there were no figures, no quantum figures mentioned at that meeting from where you got those reports. Now, what was said, what the INEC chairman said, was that in 2011, the cost of election per voter, which is the standard benchmark globally, is to cost elections per voter and see how much is being spent. But the cost of elections in 2014 and in 2015 will be about 10% less from what we had in 2011. Because by 2014, 2015, we are expecting and working to make elections an average of $7 per voter. Now, what people did was to just calculate $7 times 73.5 million people in the voter register. But I'll give you glaring weaknesses of that. Number one, don't forget that out of that 73.5 million people, so many millions have also been weeded out as multiple registrations. Number two, elections are not funded as quantum sums. They are funded over a 4-year cycle. And so if you talk about the cost of election per voter, it takes into account the election cycle over which the election is funded. So it's not to say in 2015 you bring X amount. That is not what is being said. After all, this year, in this year's budget, we get some. We budgeted for some permanent voter cards. We budgeted for some card readers. Next year's election, next year's budget, will take care of some of that also. These are all parts of the cost of the election. And so the cost of the election is over a 4-year cycle. And it's not a quantum sum, like it's been said. Then another point, actually, is that that cost also takes into account the litigation that takes place, both pre-election and post-election litigation. And so when you spread this, you discover that, I mean, if you take the way it was reported literally, it was unnecessarily alarming.